Welcome to Coffee Commerce. My name is Sean Revd and I'm the grandson of a coffee farmer from Guyana, South America. On Coffee Commerce, we talk about the stories behind coffee as they relate to business, commerce, and society. We've been talking about the Civil War in America and how the import of coffee played a role in both armies. Before we get into where the coffee came from, we must first go back to Ethiopia. Coffee may have originated in Ethiopia, but it would be the Arab world that would make coffee a commodity. In the 1500s, the Arabs would be the first to cultivate and propagate coffee. In part, this was due to religious practices of the Arab monks from the modern-day Yemen region. They were pioneers in the systematic cultivating of the coffee plant. Not only did they cultivate coffee, but they were quite possibly the first to give it its name as we know it today. Kawa, which is the Arab world connected with the word wine, was what they called the beverage. Initially, it was cultivated to help the monks stay vigilant during late night prayers, but it would soon be the beverage to cross religious, political, social, and geographical boundaries. By 1536, coffee began to spread beyond the peninsula throughout the Ottoman Empire and into other regions of the world. Yemen would be the hub of trade, giving the Arab world a monopoly on coffee. Coffee would become a popular traded commodity in Europe and Africa, mainly through the Yemen port of Mocha at the Red Sea, making the word Mocha yet another name associated with the beverage that we have the Arabs to thank for this. The Arab world was very guarded about keeping this monopoly to themselves, finding it a very lucrative and reliable source of revenues. They were particularly careful with how coffee was exported. Understanding that coffee beans were in fact seeds and could cost them their monopoly if it was transplanted elsewhere, it was prohibited from exporting green coffee beans. Apparently, the death penalty could be invoked if this law was broken. The beans for exporting would be either boiled or partially roasted, which would in essence prevent the germination of the coffee plant outside of Yemen. For more than a century, Yemen was successful with this approach, maintaining the monopoly on coffee. Although the ban on exporting seeds, or the coffee beans, would deter most would-be business owners and traders, this would open things up to another group that would find the ban more of a challenge than a deterrence: smugglers. Apparently, there were some known cases of seeds being smuggled. The first well-known smuggler would come back about around the time of 1600. It would be an East Indian man who was a Sufi monk on a pilgrimage from Mecca. His name was Baba Budan. Budan was on a pilgrimage. On his way back, he passed through Yemen and the port of Mocha. It was here that he got a hold of the new beverage kawa and fell in love with it. Budan snuck 7 coffee beans out of the Yemen port and back to his native India, allegedly taping them to his stomach. Another account has Budan hiding the beans in his beard. Yet another account has Budan hiding the beans in his clothes. Regardless of how he smuggled the beans out of Yemen, he would nonetheless be successful in bringing the beans to India. After returning from his pilgrimage, Baba Budan planted the 7 seeds of coffee in the courtyard of his hermitage in the Mysore region, becoming India's coffee birthplace. The coffee plants gradually spread as backyard plantings and later to the surrounding hills. Today, the entire mountain range is named Baba Budan Giri in his honor. Giri means hill. Coffee plants flourished in this region, and it does still today. It includes the highest peaks of the region, and today they call it India's coffee country. It would take some time to get cultivation of coffee just right. The plant suffered from various diseases, including what they call rust on the leaves. Eventually, India would adopt several other beans, more resilient, like Robusta. We have Reverend Edward Terry to thank for the first reference to the consumption of coffee in India around the year 1616. This was in the court of Emperor Jahangir. Reverend Terry was the chaplain to Sir Thomas Roe, King James' ambassador to the emperor's court. Reverend Terry writes, "Many of the people there in India who are strict in their religion drink no wine at all, but they use a liquor more wholesome than pleasant. They call coffee, made by a black seed boiled in water, which turns it almost the same color, but doth very little alter the taste of the water. Notwithstanding, it is very good to help digestion, to quicken spirits, and to cleanse the blood." It would take about 200 years before commercial cultivation of coffee would be an industry in India. And as Terry mentions about drinking coffee in India, his writings were from 1840. Ironically, it was the British who established the Arabica coffee plantation throughout the mountains of southern India. In fact, it was through the efforts of the British East India Company that coffee fueled the British coffee houses that we spoke of earlier. Today, India is the 6th largest producer of coffee in the world. India's coffee is said to be amongst the finest in what they call shade-grown coffee. Shade-grown is a unique approach, which means coffee is grown under a canopy of different varieties of shades of trees, which ensures the canopy of tree cover is always maintained. Sometimes these trees are other vegetation that is used for food. This prevents the beans from getting direct sunlight. There are approximately 250,000 coffee cultivators in India. India is also home to 16 unique coffee varieties. Coffee is grown in 3 regions: the traditional southern region that we've just spoken about, as well as the northeastern part of India and the east coast. Although we have Budan to thank for being the first known successful coffee smuggler out of the Yemen port of Mocha, it would not be this smuggling story that allowed for the global cultivation of coffee. We have others to thank for that, but that's another story for another cup of coffee. Thank you.